Guess who's a little bit upset with us, the British people? Oh yes, it's the United Nations, that so-called credible institution that was set up to create world peace. Yeah, it went so well in the 20th century, and even now in the 21st century. So peaceful. The world is absolutely peaceful. All the problems have gone away thanks to the United Nations, right? Now we have UN judges. Oh yes, they have judges. You know the whole European Court of Justice? We also have the International Court of Justice dealing with the United Nations and all the bureaucrats that we are funding, by the way. But what are we talking about? This is about one of the UN leading judges, Patrick Robinson, who has said that the United Kingdom cannot ignore calls for slavery reparations. Oh dear, every single week we have to deal with the same topic. We've been doing this for the past few decades. Now, I'm going to be destroying this guy with facts. Let's talk about what he's actually said and how I'm going to be responding to it. This guy said, Robinson, they cannot continue, as in the British people, to ignore the greatest atrocity, signifying man's inhumanity to man. They cannot continue to ignore it. He's having a meltdown. Reparations have been paid for other wrongs, and obviously far more quickly, far more speedily than reparations for what I consider the greatest atrocity and crime in the history of mankind. Transatlantic chattel slavery, blah, blah, blah. And then he also said, I believe that the United Kingdom will not be able to resist this movement towards the payment of reparations. It is required by history and it is required by law. How can it be required by history? That sentence makes no sense. You could say ideally, that would be nice. And required by law. I mean, the law, international law that's implemented by you guys, the international judges. Yeah, I trust that very much so. All right, so unfortunately, I have a bad feeling that the way the world is going and the left-wing establishment's growing in the West, we might inevitably actually end up doing it when you have someone like Keir Starmer and other left-wing leaders in place. We might even have King Charles eventually surrendering to this movement. So, unfortunately, these guys might win. But none of this makes sense. Why? Because they're calling for reparations and apologies. The apology thing happens all the time on a regular basis. But in terms of reparations, so we're talking about decades, centuries ago, right? And ancient times, every nation either was an empire or wanted to be an empire, and every civilization dealt with slavery at some point. Even white Europeans were slaves. You had the Roman Empire, you had the Ottoman Empire, you had the Muslim Empire, you had what happened in Spain, again with the Muslim Empire, you had literally every group did it. But somehow we're just obsessed with what happened, 200 years ago, right? Everybody's obsessed with the British Empire for some reason. Maybe because it was the most successful one, right? It's just envy. But if you're going to ask for money to those slaves from Africa, firstly, those people don't exist anymore. And if you're born now, you have no links to your ancestors. It doesn't really matter about your skin color. You're born, you start fresh from scratch. But let's just say somebody has to pay someone. What about asking the actual slave traders in Africa, the warlords, who were selling them, who were treating humans as commodities? You had all this, even the BBC talked about some people saying, oh, my Nigerian great-grandfather sold slaves. Oh, no. Obviously, if the white empires were buying slaves, somebody had to sell them. Who was that? Oh, people from Africa. So, are they going to be paying some money to their own people? Are you going to ask for that? Oh, are you too scared? Is it politically incorrect? Oh dear. All right, so that's one thing. Second issue, this Robinson guy also says, oh God, I'm not going to read the whole thing. He says, I have the highest regard for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Of course you do. But I believe the stance he has taken is regrettable, and I very much hope that he will reconsider, because the Rishi Sunak has rejected these calls. He said the tide is changing, the political tide. The global tide is moving. Oh yeah. The United Kingdom, both principal parties, the Tories and Labour, and other parties, which are just as important, no they're not, not the Lib Dems, need to take into account the movement as a movement, blah, blah, blah. So, is now interfering in our politics, talking about our political parties, right? Why not talk about the apology thing, right? They keep asking for an apology. How many times do we have to apologize? We literally had in 1840, in June 1840, on my birthday, we had Prince Albert addressing a large international anti-slavery meeting called the Society for the Extinction of the Slave Trade and for this Civilization of Africa. That was the longest title ever. It was in London, in which he said that his wife's wholehearted support for the efforts of Thomas Fowle Buxton, who was the successor of William Wilberforce, and the British anti-slavery lobby. So it was the first time that the monarchy ever associated themselves with a political cause, and since then we've had a number of other statements. But Prince Albert did it. That was a very key moment. The apology was made. Not only apology, we almost went bankrupt, for the love of God. The British government also paid, firstly, the latest thing was £20 million, right? Which was equivalent of now around £17 billion to compensate the slave owners, obviously. Then, of course, the damages around it and to the families who were affected by it as well. The payout was a massive 40% of the government's budget and required many bonds to slave owners. And of course, as I said, the damages to the families and the victims as well. So all that was done. We almost went bankrupt as a country. We led the world, and we still have to apologize, and we still have to give more money. Why not just stop blaming the whole world for your own problems and sort out your countries and your continent? Maybe. Instead of selling out to the Russians, to the Chinese, to Americans and everybody else who come to your continent and take, I mean, firstly, Robinson's links, I believe, is in Jamaica. It's not even Africa. But apparently it doesn't matter these days. It's all about skin color. Apparently even Meghan Markle is African, even though she's literally half white. But yeah. Take a break, guys. Let's take a break. I'm Mahyar, Tousi, and we are the media.